Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to tonight's debate among candidates for the State Senate and the General Assembly from the 2nd Legislative District in New Jersey. The 2nd District includes most of Atlantic County, and it is co-sponsored tonight's debate by the William J. Hughes Center for Public Policy at the Richard Stockton College, and also by the Press of Atlantic City. My name is Peter Brophy. I am the interim executive editor at the Press of Atlantic City. This is the first of 3 debates that are being co-sponsored by Stockton and the Press. The second will happen in about 2 weeks in the 1st Legislative District down at Cape May Courthouse. The 1st Legislative District includes Cape May County, Cumberland County, and part of Atlantic County. And then about 3 weeks, the 3rd debate that we're co-sponsoring will take place at Stockton College itself, and that will be among candidates for the 9th Legislative District, and that includes for us Galloway Township, Little Lake Harbor Township, and many points farther north. Putting these debates together involves a bit of work, and I'd like to introduce one gentleman who put in quite a bit of work. The director of the William J. Hughes Center for Public Policy is Dan Douglas, standing in the back. I want to say that we at the Press have found him to be a very professional and excellent person to be in partnership with, along with all the people at Stockton. So it's been a good experience for us, and we think for the public in general. Our moderator tonight is a woman I've come to respect a great deal, is SHaron Schulman of Stockton. Her title, which I always get wrong, so I wrote it down this time, is Chief Executive Officer, External Affairs and Institutional Research. Thank you, at Stockton. So at this point, SHaron will take over as moderator, and the debate will begin. SHaron, thank you.
That's why he couldn't read it. I had his glasses over here. Thank you, Pete, and thank you all for coming out. Stockton sees these debates, and the Hughes Center sees these debates as something very, very important to the public and the availability of hearing the different candidates. Tonight, we're going to have the 2 Senate candidates, and I'm going to introduce them, and if I get my lefts and rights wrong, somebody correct me. From the audience left, Democratic incumbent, State Senator Jim Whelan. On your right, the Republican challenger, Atlantic County Sheriff Frank Ballas. We have 2 questioners tonight, and we have one of our assistants from the Hughes Center who's going to be our timer, and we'll make sure we stay true to our rules as we set them up. Aaliyah Montague is our timer tonight, and our assistant. John Frungen, who is a senior research associate from the Hughes Center, will be one of the questioners. Many of you may know him from a few years ago when he was an investigative reporter, among other jobs, at the Atlantic City Press. And Linda Cohen, who is a staff reporter currently with the Press of Atlantic City, is also with us. So I thank you all for all your help tonight. Let me go over the rules of the debate. And I don't expect to have any problems, but I will keep it strictly to them. It is Stockton, not only Stockton policy, but it happens to be state policy that we cannot allow campaign signs on our grounds. The college and all higher education is seen as neutral territory. So please do not display any signs, any banners, that type of a thing for the debate tonight. We will have to ask that they be removed. The questions will be posed by the 2 questioners, and we will not be taking questions from the floor. I'm also going to ask that if you have any applause, you hold everything till the end so that we don't have any cheering or anything else for different candidates as we go along. The format that we're going to use is one that we have used for the last several debates, and we've been doing this for several years now, and was previously agreed upon by all the participants. There will be a 2-minute opening. The first opener decided by a toss of the coin, and alternating party candidates after that. Frank Ballas has won the toss of the coin and has elected to go last on the opening. Then we will give the first question to an opening candidate, and the questions will be alternated from there. Aaliyah will be giving the candidates warning signs at 30 seconds and at 15 seconds. Their questions can be answered. There's a 2-minute response by the person who was asked a question, and a 1-minute rebuttal from the other candidate if he wishes to do so. There'll be a 1-minute close. The first opener is the first closer, and the same order from opening will follow. We ask that you stop when you see the signs, gentlemen. in fairness to the other candidate and so that we can gauge the other candidates in more questions. So I believe we are ready for opening. And Jim Whelan, you open. Thank you.
Thank you. First, let me thank Stockton College and Press Atlantic City and all of you for their involvement in this event. Folks I talk to are frustrated, frightened, and angry. Frustrated because the deal used to be that if you worked hard and played by the rules, you'd be able to get a decent job, buy a home, and take care of your family. Folks are frightened because that good job is now a part-time job, and they're in danger of losing their home. And they won't be able to pay the bills if one of the kids gets sick. And they're angry because instead of the deal they thought they'd be getting, the deal now is the rich are getting richer, the middle class is losing ground, and the poor are being buried. By any measure, more and more wealth is being concentrated in the hands of the super wealthy, with the greatest benefits of the recent recovery going to the richest among us. That's not right, it's not fair, and it's not good for the economy. The last time our nation had this kind of disparity in wealth was 1928, followed by 10 years of the Great Depression. Within our region, the situation is worse. Casino competition from neighboring states has negatively impacted our casinos, with workers hit the hardest, and other redevelopment projects are stalled. But there is a way out of this mess. At the state, let's ask the super wealthy, those earning more than $1 million a year, to contribute a little more so we can reduce property taxes 10% on the middle-class homeowner. Let's raise the minimum wage and fully restore the earned income tax credit so people can work their way out of poverty. Locally, we need more conventions, more marketing, including overseas marketing, and let's diversify by helping the offshore wind farm and the manufacturing sector. We can do these things. We must do these things if we are to secure our future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Whelan. Mr. Ballas.
Good evening. My name is Frank Ballas. I'm currently your Atlantic County Sheriff. I began my career in public service in 1986 with the Pleasantville Police Department and quickly rose to the ranks to become the administrative captain. During my career, I never planned nor dreamed of running for public office. Members of the Sheriff's Office came to me and asked me to run because they believed I could make their workplace better. And this would give me the opportunity to protect and serve a greater number of people. While campaigning for sheriff, I made several promises. Once I took office, I was able to fulfill each and every one, and then some. For example, our officers played a vital role in the investigation and takedown of 2 violent gangs within Atlantic City. These operations have made Atlantic City a safer place. The crime and murder rate has dropped substantially. The residents of Atlantic County now know they have a sheriff's office that they can count on. I believe I bring a different perspective to the office of State Senate. The training and experience I've received over the last 28 years in municipal and county governments gives me a unique outlook into state government. And in the private sector, my wife Cindy and I owned and operated a private business, a small business, creating jobs right here in Atlantic County. And I have a direct understanding of the challenges that government places on small business. I'm running for Senate for so many reasons. First of which is to bring real leadership back to the 2nd District. In the past, our district has had strong leadership with Senators Gormley, Persky, and Farley. That type of leadership is lacking today. Under Jim Whelan, our government spends too much, taxes too much, and we've lost 15,000 jobs. As your senator, I will fight to cut our taxes, work with Governor Christie and all members of the Senate to bring development and jobs back to Atlantic County. My name is Frank Ballas. I'm running for State Senate, and I'm asking for your vote.
Thank you. I see we have a real timer when we do this.
With sound.
Yes. So now we're going to go to our questions. The first question goes to our opener, Mr. Whelan.
Senator, what do you think are the most important issues in this campaign?
I think there's one, the economy, specifically property taxes. More and more people are losing their homes to foreclosures. More and more people are worried that the ever-escalating cost of owning a home, even if you've paid off the mortgage. We see property tax bills that are going up. In the last 3 years, property tax bills have gone up on average over 15%. We need to do something about that. I support the plan, frankly, that was put forward by Senator Sweeney that cuts everybody's property taxes by 10%, gives them a dollar for dollar credit on their income tax. So the typical property tax bill is somewhere between $7,000 and $8,000. You give somebody a 10% reduction on that to a middle-class homeowner. That's not only good for the homeowner, that's going to help the economy because those people are going to go out and spend that money. They don't have the ability to salt it away or invest it overseas or whatever. They need to buy a new appliance. They need to get the car fixed. They need to buy their kids' school clothes. So you get a double bounce when you give $700 or $800 to a working family in our state. It's good for them. It's good for the overall economy. And it shows them that hanging their property tax relief is on the way. We've just seen ever-escalating property tax relief, and that's got to change. I think that's number one. The question is, how do you pay for it? I think, as I said in my opening, the millionaire's tax, which again is a tax on the second million that you earn. If you earn $1 million, you pay the old rate, and if you earn $2 million, you pay the old rate on the first million and the enhanced rate on the second million, and that will give us the dollars we need to provide some real property tax relief for the homeowners here in New Jersey and in Atlantic County.
Thank you, Mr. Whelan. Mr. Ballas, would you like to give a 1-minute rebuttal?
Sure. I agree, the economy, but I would also like to add jobs and taxes. Like I said earlier, we're overtaxed. Let me bring you back to 2006. In 2006, my opponent cast that critical vote to shut down our state, which closed our casinos, and 50,000 casino employees went without a paycheck. We have never recovered since then. The revenue from casinos has gone down each and every year. Our conventions, people are afraid to bring a convention here because they're not sure whether the state will shut down, the casinos will shut down, and we need to make sure that that never happens again. Again, jobs, taxes, and the economy, we need to make sure that this area is business friendly, and we're going to reduce the burden of taxes on businesses to bring businesses here. And businesses will create the jobs that we need, and the jobs that we need will then enhance the economy. And that's the way we need to get it done.
Thank you. Before we go on to the next question, I'm going to ask Aaliyah, can you hold those up a little higher when you do this because of the lights? It's really hard for us to see them up here. Thank you. Next question from Linda Cohen.
Sheriff, how would your budget priorities differ from Senator Whelan's?
Thanks, Linda. Well, as the administrative captain within the city of Pleasantville and as the sheriff, I've been dealing with budgets for many, many years. And we make sure, especially as sheriff with a $10.5 million budget, that we do more with less all the time. And that's what needs to be done. We need to look into our state budget and go through that line by line. Because I believe that in our state, we have a spending problem. We don't have a revenue problem. We have $33 billion of revenue coming in from each and every one of you sitting out here in this audience. We need to scrutinize that budget. We need to look at some of the things that need to be regionalized. And basically what we need to do is go line by line and attack that budget. We need to look at school funding and make sure that that's being addressed. We need to look at regionalization and shared services. Right now we're looking at sharing a service and a countywide dispatch, which will save money in each municipality. They're the things we need to look at.
Thank you. Mr. Whelan?
First of all, I agree that the first place to look is cuts. The problem with the cuts that we have seen under the last 3 years is that the cuts have been on the municipal aid and school aid side. All that does is force the towns and the school boards to raise their property taxes because they were getting so much aid, now they get less aid. We need to go through on the operational side of state government and make sure we are as lean as possible with regard to that, and we're not. We need to do a better job in making those kind of cuts. I think also we need to restore women's health. For $7.9 million, a 9-to-1 match from the federal government would let us reopen the 6 health centers that have closed and let us provide health services for literally thousands of women in this state and families who are not getting the health care that they need. That would be a priority. Let's restore the aid that went to school boards as well as to municipal aid so we can dampen down the property taxes.
Thank you. John, next question, please.
Senator, the Stockton poll has found 80% of New Jersey voters saying that property taxes have gone up in the last 3 years, either a little or a lot. You somewhat addressed this issue of what should be done about property taxes in your last answer, but I'd like you to amplify it. And the state has done, the legislature and governor did take some actions to try to control property taxes with a cap. This anger that's being expressed, what does that say about the efforts to date?
Well, it says that while we've controlled the spending side, the state is sending less money to the school districts and to the municipality. If they were getting $100 before, now they're getting 75 or 80 bucks. And for a while it was down to 60 bucks. And the governor restored some of the money that was cut his first year and said, look at all the money we're giving back, but we're still not back to the point where we were a few years ago. So again, I think the priority has to be when we make cuts in government, don't just push it off to local municipalities and local school boards. Let's make some real cuts in state government so that the bill doesn't just get submitted down the line to our local school boards and to our local municipalities. I think also we need to do things to strengthen shared services, and maybe we've gone a little too much on the carrot side where we've provided incentives. Maybe we have to be a little more forceful and talk about creating some disincentives if you don't do shared services. We have too many layers of government. We have too much government in New Jersey. I think everyone agrees with that. But nobody wants to give up their precious home rule. I think we need to do that if we're going to be serious about cutting government spending from the state level through the counties on down to the local municipalities.
Thank you. Mr. Ballas.
Yes. Well, in 10 years, with a Democratic-controlled Assembly, Democratic-controlled Senate, and a Democratic governor, we've raised taxes 115 times to the tune of about $4 billion. So I can see why residents would poll saying 80% believe that taxes are very high. In 2006, our sales tax was raised to 7%, and it also now applies to phones, magazines, club memberships, vehicle registrations, where you're already paying a fee and now you're taxed on top of your fee, parking and landscaping. So yes, residents of Atlantic County, residents of the state of New Jersey, we are overtaxed. We need to start cutting spending, start cutting taxes.
Thank you. Linda, would you like to do the next question?
Sheriff, you had talked about jobs being important. What can be done to stimulate jobs and the economy in the state?
Who's your question to? Is it to Mr. Ballas?
Sure.
Okay.
Thanks, Linda. Yes, again, I believe that jobs, taxes, and the economy, and there's a common thread that goes through each and every one of them. And by reducing the burden, the tax burden on our businesses, as some of you may know, Forbes magazine just did an article where they conducted a survey of the top 200 places to open a business. Atlantic City came 200 out of 200. And one of the reasons is because it costs 8% more to operate a business right here in Atlantic City than it does anywhere else in the country. If we can reduce the burden on businesses tax-wise, we can bring businesses into this area. And by bringing businesses into this area, we're going to create jobs. It's not really the government's responsibility to create jobs. The government already is number 2 as an employer in the state of New Jersey. Right underneath pharmaceutical and tourism. And tourism is very big to us, and we need to concentrate on that. I can tell you, in June, the end of June, I went down to Charlotte, North Carolina for the National Sheriff's Conference. 15, 18 years ago, you couldn't walk the streets in Charlotte. They brought the banking and insurance industry and NASCAR. Now, of course, we don't have NASCAR here, but we have casinos. They were able to get convention and conference, one after the other. It's beautiful there. If it can be done there, it can be done here. Throughout my career, many times people have told me, your thinking will never happen. You can't get it done. And we've been able to get it done each and every time. We need a new way of thinking in Trenton. We need to bring common sense to Trenton, and we will attract businesses here. The governor and lieutenant governor, they've been able to attract businesses to North Jersey. We need to get that kind of thinking down here. We finally have a governor who is paying attention to this district, to Atlantic County. We need to capitalize on that, He needs people up there to support him and not send him bad bills that he has to veto and conditionally veto time and time again. Right now, you see most of the Democrats, they're wrapping their arms around Governor Christie because he's polling so high. But it's just not true. They don't support him.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. John, can we have the next question, please, for Mr. Whelan?
Do I get a rebuttal?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yes, you do.
I think there are a number of bills, and the sheriff alluded to some of them, and frankly, the governor vetoed them. We had one bill that would have allowed a person on unemployment to continue their unemployment while they're in a job training program. The governor vetoed that. So there are times that I disagree with the governor, and frankly, there are times when I agree with the governor. So and when I agree with him, we're going to support him, and when we disagree, we're going to take issue with him. I think, though, that there are some things that we have done that the governor has been able to support. One is a tax credit for businesses that, as they create new jobs, they get a tax credit for every new employee that they bring in, starting with 10 employees. So that there's an incentive there. Let's create new jobs. You will get a tax credit. I think also that we should pay special attention in this area to our veterans. I was one of the sponsors of the Helmets to Hard Hats, so that as people come out of the military, we can hopefully transition them into the job market, into a career.
Thank you. Now, John, would you like to ask the next question?
Sure. Atlantic City's casinos continue to struggle, and with them, this region's economy. Are you satisfied with the results of creating an Atlantic City tourism district? Should something else be done?
Are we satisfied? No, we're not satisfied. All you have to do is look at the numbers. And we know that there is a lot more that needs to be done. I think there are two things. One is sort of a fundamental approach. So let's get back to some basics. Conventions certainly have to be a part of it. And I have, frankly, been frustrated that the Convention Center Authority is understaffed right now. I know there was a transition from Convention Center Authority becoming part of CRETA. When I was on the board there in the early 2000s, we had 12 salespeople in the workforce. Now we're down to 5. Let's ramp that up so we have people. The reason we're not getting conventions is nothing to do with other than the fact that we don't have enough people out there selling the conventions. Secondly, I think we need to do some overseas marketing and make ourselves part of what I would call the East Coast destination. I don't know that overseas travelers, frankly, are going to come just to Atlantic City, but I think they would come to Atlantic City and go up to New York or down to Washington or over to Philly as part of an East Coast destination. And I think we need, and I've had some conversations with both folks at the Convention Center Authority as well as CRETA about trying to implement a program like that so we can get some overseas travelers. Obviously, the convenience gambler is gone. And we have to broaden and go back to some basics, like I said, with conventions, with better marketing, trade shows, events. I think those are all things we need to do.
Thank you. Mr. Bells?
Okay. Like I said earlier, I believe the casinos, they started their downfall back in 2006 when they were shut down by the government. But that's water under the bridge now. We need to make sure that we're doing things to make Atlantic City a tourist destination. And it can be done. Growing up here as a child in Atlantic City with the $1 Million Pier, the Steeplechase Pier, the Seal Pier, there's family entertainment that can be brought to Atlantic City. We look right across the street. I'm sure you saw the ground tour up. Bass Pro Shops is coming in here. We brought Miss America pageant back here thanks to our county executive and our lieutenant governor taking that initiative. Things can happen here. And movie theaters, bowling alleys, they're the things that we look forward to. You know, when residents of Atlantic City voted for casinos and states voted for casinos, people were told you wouldn't have to worry about your property tax. Well, guess what? Ask anybody who lives in Atlantic City, and for that point, anywhere in Atlantic County, if they're worried about their property taxes right now. We need to make sure that we're bringing business here in Atlantic City, making this a destination, and making sure that they will complement the casinos.
Thank you. Linda, next question, please.
Sheriff, with everyone having a stake, everyone in the state having a stake in Atlantic City, do you think that it's fair to limit the CRDA funding to just the city, or would you see some exceptions, for example, funding police in Pleasantville, where it's realized that Atlantic City and Pleasantville do share crime? Would that be fair to as well share funding?
Great question. Well, first of all, I don't think that CRDA money should be used to fund employees. I don't believe that's part of CRDA's mission statement. They're to fund projects, to fund infrastructure. We need to fix the infrastructure here in Atlantic City. Every street in the city of Atlantic City should be paved. Every curb should be fixed. Even if behind the curbs there's buildings or empty lots, if someone coming to Atlantic City sees a street that's paved and drives down it, they're having a pleasurable ride. Right now, you drive down the street in Atlantic City, you have to hold onto that wheel because it's going to shake right off the street. They're the things we need to fix. I believe that CRDA money should actually be regionalized. It could be used throughout Atlantic County. You know, we're talking about a project out at NAFEC with the Aviation Research Park. If that gets built and CRDA can help fund some of that, and I know Stockton College is partnering in that and being the overseer, and what a great organization. We can create good paying jobs, and these good paying jobs will then support the casinos. We can't be small-minded and say this money just needs to stay within Atlantic City. We see the way some of this money is wasted. You look at the Pinnacle site, where they spent millions of dollars to put ground and grass and a sunken boat and a statue, and now the property's sold, and they have to take all that back up at another expense and decide where they're going to put it. That stuff shouldn't be happening. As a state senator, you have to make sure you're working hand in hand with CRDA to make sure it doesn't happen. And you can't then, after it happens, say, that shouldn't have happened. That was a bad idea. You're the liaison between the municipality and the state. And you have to make sure that you're there full time. You can't be asleep at the wheel. That's why you need a full-time senator here in this district. There may be other districts in this state where you can deal with a part-time senator, but here, with the problems that we have, we need a full-time senator, and that's what I'll be.
Thank you. Mr. Whelan.
Yeah, well, there was a time when Atlantic City could afford to have the CRETA money and other projects go outside. We're past that point. Atlantic City needs every dollar it can. And if we open up, then say, well, we're going to do the Route 30 Parkway interchange, and then we're going to do something over on Route 40, and then we're going to do something over here and something over there, we will be right back to where we see the majority of the CRETA money going outside of Atlantic City. Atlantic City needs those resources right now to fix its infrastructure that Sheriff Powell's identified as a priority. So I am not in favor of reopening that. I think the money has to stay here. I think we need to find other ways to fund those projects. Take the Route 30 interchange. That's a toll road, for crying out loud. Every time you drive past, easy pass, or throw quarters in a change bucket, they have enough dollars to do what they need to do. So again, I'm not in favor of CRETA money leaving Atlantic City, going around the state, because you're not going to stop, just with Atlantic County. The other counties are going to want their piece.
Thank you. Linda, I believe you're asking the next question.
That would be me. Senator, are you satisfied with the state's effort to help affected regions recover from Superstorm Sandy? Is there anything more the state should have done or should be doing?
No, I'm not satisfied at all. We just had a hearing on Monday in Trenton. We had a hearing in August here in Atlantic City on this. My office is constantly in touch with constituents from the shore communities as well as some of the mainland communities. It's a nightmare, and I think there's two fundamental problems. The first is a lack of communication. People have applied for programs, and they've been told, well, we have a formula that will determine who gets what, but nobody knows what that formula is. And nobody knows when the message is going to come out as to when you'll be notified. So I think that's lack of communication, lack of transparency is the biggest problem that we have. I think the second problem, frankly, is that there were some rush to judgments made by the administration, and I'll give you two examples. One was the V-zone. Everybody in this room from Absecon Island knows you are not getting a 3-foot wave on the bay. And I spoke out on that, and others spoke out on that after I did. And, lo and behold, 6 weeks later, a lot of angst, a lot of confusion. People had already raised their houses Some people in Margate, you go by and they raise their house to the level of the V zone and find out, well, you're not in a V zone, you didn't have to go that high. So that kind of, jumping the gun. And frankly, we saw another example with Ashbridge. Ashbridge, there was a woman in Brigantine who had a boat, her boat, towed off her lawn by Ashbridge, and she was given a $27,000 bill to get it back. $27,000 to tow a boat. We all live at the shore. We know that's outrageous. So there was a rush to judgment on some issues that should not have occurred, and there still is a woeful lack of communication.
Thank you. Mr. Ballas?
Thank you. I agree with the senator on this point. But let's just jump back to that last question. When we were talking about Route 30, the interchange there, that would be completely funded by DOT funds. It's just going to take some time to get that done. So we're not looking about taking money and taking it onto a state highway. That funding is there. Now, talking about Superstorm Sandy, I had firsthand experience. I was out the first night during it, 24 hours a day, in each and every one of these communities, each from Longport all the way down to Brigantine, meeting with the mayors. I see Mayor Russo sitting out there. Myself, the county executive, emergency management, on a daily basis, we met with them to see what they needed. But when you're looking at federal government, state government, county government, and municipal government, we need to find a way to make sure that they're all working together. Right now, there's billions of dollars that's going to come into this state. We don't know where that money is going to go as far as fixing the infrastructure, mitigation projects. We need to make sure that that money is spent correctly.
Thank you very much. Linda?
What restrictions, if any, would you place on the rebuilding of damaged or destroyed properties that are vulnerable along the storm?
Repeat that question?
What restrictions, if any, would you place on rebuilding of damaged or destroyed properties that are vulnerable to storms along the shore?
Okay, well, I think that's really a question for the federal government. And that's going to be part of the FEMA insurance plan. And there's going to be restrictions, I'm sure, that are going to be placed on property owners that continually are in harm's way when storms come in. The problem that we had here on our coastline, and luckily we weren't up north a little bit further because they really got it, they took it on the chin pretty hard. Our problem was the water rising up from the bay, coming over the bulkheads, coming through the sewer system, to the drainage system, and flooding the roadways, going up. We didn't have that wave action coming off the beach. We didn't have wave action, of course, coming off the bay, and it's almost impossible. And as the senator said, with the V zones, they were talking about homes that were right along the bay being in a V zone. And we know, we're here our entire life, you're not going to have a wave crashing into your house off the bay. So we need to make sure that state government really looks and makes sure that the mitigation, we need to look at, probably raising the bulkheads so the roadways aren't going to flood, and changing the storm drain system so it's not then going through the storm drain system and coming up in the streets, instead of asking each and every one of these homes to be raised. It makes absolutely no sense. If you can raise the bulkhead and have a real mitigation project, you're not going to be putting people out of their homes. And as you know, a lot of these homes cannot even be raised. And this is something that we'll be dealing with for the next probably 5, 6, 10 years as we come. Our weather system is changing a little bit, and we're probably going to get these storms a little bit more often. But we can't now just go in, especially with all the restrictions that are coming from the federal government and from the insurance agencies, and as a state government, come in and make it tougher for the people to live in this area. People have been here for a long time. They want to stay here. These are their homes.
Thank you. Mr. Whelan.
I think there are some things that we need to do at the state level, and one that I applaud is the aggressive posture that we now have on the dunes. I'm proud of the fact that when I served in Atlantic City government, I was an advocate for the dunes. There were a lot of people that were mad at me for a while on that, but after Hurricane Sandy, the issue seems to have died down, and there's no question that the dunes help preserve the boardwalk and the property along the beachfront in Atlantic City as well as Ventnor. If you looked at what happened in Ventnor and Atlantic City compared to Margate, where there's a lot of sand and so on, we didn't have that. The other thing, and this is where I disagree with the administration, I think we should, when we have willing sellers in areas that want to sell, that are tired of being flooded out, we shouldn't mandate that everybody on the block has to sell. The way it is now, it's like you have to get the whole parcel or we're not going to get anything. I think if we could get it piece by piece, it would make sense, because maybe after Sandy, there's 10 houses on the block, you get 2 or 3. Another event, you might get another 2 or 3 or 4, and eventually get it all.
Thank you. John, next question.
Just want to point out this question was posed by a Stockton College student. What have you done, if anything, to advance the use of green energy, and what would you do if reelected or elected?
Well, there are a couple things. One, I've been a very strong supporter of the offshore efforts with the wind farms and so on, and trying to make sure that there is the ability for the state to provide the incentives so that we can get a test market. We know Atlantic City is the site potentially for the first offshore wind farms in our country. And I think we should take advantage of that and make that happen out there, and then allow South Jersey to become a hub for the jobs that would come along with the offshore wind. Probably would be on the Delaware Bay side, but nevertheless, some of those jobs would spill over into our neck of the woods. One of the other things that I've done, we have a bill, I put a bill through to allow landfills to be converted to solar fields. You have literally, landfills in a polite word for an old dump. And you have these old dumps that are sitting out there that are not doing anybody any good. They're in remote areas. Can we allow them to be covered with solar panels so we can collect that solar energy, get it into the transmission line, and get it into the power grid? That's a bill that I put through that has become law, and hopefully we will see some people take advantage of that. I think also the bills for land wind are also a part of bills that I've supported and will continue to support. I just want to touch on one other thing, though, in a few seconds left. Atlantic City is not sliding down because we closed the government in 2006. Anybody who believes that, our slide is due to the competition that we face from Pennsylvania, Connecticut, New York, etc. That's what it is. It has nothing to do with the one-time occurrence back in 2006.
Thank you. Mr. Bells.
Thank you. As sheriff, as far as green energy, I really haven't had a chance to affect anything green energy-wise, other than we just supervised a project where they've covered the entire courthouse in Mays Landing and here in Atlantic City and the entire parking lot in Mays Landing. But I can tell you what I wouldn't do as far as green energy. I wouldn't propose a bill to tax every vehicle for every mile they drive their vehicle, and then turn around and say it's for green vehicles, energy efficient vehicles, which are either CNG or electric vehicles. The Sierra Club is very much against that. We're penalizing somebody because they want to buy a green vehicle. That's something that we cannot do. The other thing that I'm very interested in, and I'm really looking into this, is to take and put turbines in our waterways. The tide goes up and down 4 times a day, and that water is constantly moving, and it's moving fast. And in these inlets, we can take that energy and create electricity just by the water coming in and out of these back bays.
Thank you. Linda?
Sheriff, you said that you wouldn't support the bill that was proposed by Senator Whelan as far as taxing the alternative energy vehicles. So would there be any method that you would support that would have these vehicle owners contributing to the Transportation Trust Fund?
Okay. Well, first of all, the bill is very confusing because as it reads, when it was proposed and as it sits today, it is still that every registered vehicle in the state of New Jersey. And I know there's been conversation back and forth because the bill was put up for discussion, and whether it's going to be just on electric and CNG vehicles or whether it's going to be just for energy efficient vehicles. And depending on how many miles per gallon you get, you'll be a sliding scale, and that's what you'll be charged. And there's also some thought that I've heard the senator talk about, which is paying a flat fee and then going forward from there. Basically, my opinion there is on the Transportation Trust Fund, the gasoline tax that we're already bringing in is probably the smallest number of funding coming into that. There's federal money that comes into that. There's money out of the state budget that goes into that. Every vehicle that's purchased, the taxes they pay goes into the Transportation Trust Fund. The tolls that you pay on the roadways goes into the Transportation Trust Fund. So for anybody to accuse people driving energy efficient vehicles of getting a free ride on the roadway, they're paying, because they're paying more when they buy that type of vehicles, and that money does go into the Transportation Trust Fund. The other thing that makes me kind of wonder, and we have to really dig into this Transportation Trust Fund, and I can't wait to get elected and sit down with Assemblyman Amodeo, because he's on that committee, and really get into the nuts and bolts of the Transportation Trust Fund. Because the thing that's confusing to me is, on one hand we say that it's not funded, and we need to get more money, and our roads and bridges need to be repaired. And there'll be a lot of Sandy money that's going to go to fix roads and bridges also. And we're not even sure where that money is going to be spent. We already talked about that earlier. But on the other hand, we propose a bill that makes the buses that do more damage than any vehicle, especially energy efficient vehicles, to our roads and bridges, and make them exempt from paying tolls. And that money goes in the Transportation Trust Fund. So it can't be both. It can't be fully funded and be short too.
Thank you. Mr. Whelan.
Two things on this. The first is, I wish Sheriff Ballas would stop misleading people on this, and the bill's not that complicated. You don't even have to read the whole bill. You just read the cover. I'm going to read directly. It does away with the gas tax. It exempts passenger vehicles from motor fuels tax. For New Jersey drivers, it does away with the gas tax. We put the bill up for discussion because we have a problem, folks. The American Society of Civil Engineers, not Jim Whelan, not the Democratic Party, the American Society of Civil Engineers give our roads and bridges a D. Over 35% of our bridges are evaluated as functionally obsolete or structurally deficient. To me, and then when you look at the actual money that's being generated from Transportation Trust, from the gas tax, the high point was 2008. Cars are getting more efficient, and yes, alternative fuel vehicles are not contributing to the gas tax. I put the bills up for discussion. Let's have that discussion and figure this out.
Thank you. Thank you. John, next question.
I'd just like to follow up with that. New Jersey's gas tax compared with the rest of the nation is relatively low. Would you support a gas tax increase, or how would you fund the Transportation Trust Fund? This has been an issue for years.
Well, when I introduced this bill, and then a second bill that addresses the alternate fuel vehicles, I asked the chairman of the respective committees, the bills aren't ready to be voted on. Let's put it up for discussion. Because frankly, there is not a consensus of what to do. But let's at least acknowledge that there's a real problem here. Let's not pretend that we don't have a problem when our roads and bridges are getting a D and the roads are functionally, or the bridges are functionally obsolete and structurally deficient. So let's at least start the conversation. What was interesting in those hearings, John, is that many people came and they didn't like this bill. But I didn't hear what they do like. They admit, yes, there's a problem. We're not crazy about this. Let's find something else. I'm all for that. You know, let's find out what that is. One of the things is, instead of a per mile fee, would be a flat fee. You wouldn't pay any at the pump, your 14.5 cents. That would go away. And if we do a calculation on that, depending on what your mileage is, it comes out to a little less than $100 a year. So you'd pay a flat fee, boom, that's it, you're done. You're getting your gas cheaper. Out-of-state drivers would still pay the gas tax. That was one idea that came up. Shortly after I put this bill in, coincidentally, a group called Facing Our Future, which probably the academicians in the room know, and maybe some of the press people, comprised of Amy Portz, former Supreme Court Justice, Bob Huey, former cabinet member from Margate, who served in both Democratic and Republican cabinets. They came out with a report identifying this as a very severe problem and looking for solutions. One of their ideas is to take the roadways and the tolls, including the bridges, I believe, and putting all that into the mix. Because right now, those tolls are dedicated to the roads that they collect. Again, I'm open to alternative ideas. I just want to have the discussion because we got a problem. We got to fix it.
Thank you. 1 minute, Mr. Ballas.
Thank you. Our senator wants you to believe that we're going to eliminate a gas tax, We're going to charge you no more by that mileage, by that tax per mile, and magically all the roads and bridges are going to be fixed. God bless you. I agree. In this state, we have a spending problem. I'm sure many of us go to Ocean City, that 9th Street Causeway, $500 million to build that roadway and build a beautiful visitor center for Ocean City. We need to better spend our money. You know, the lights under the bridge are gorgeous, but do we really need that kind of a roadway going into Ocean City? We need to fix the roads, we need to fix the bridges, and we need to better spend our money. With sound fiscal management, we can provide better input into this Transportation Trust Fund. Money shouldn't be wasted, and that's what's happening. If we had the money to waste, that would be great, but we don't. You've heard it over and over again. The Transportation Trust Fund supposedly is broke. We need to better spend that money.
Thank you. Gentlemen, this will be the last question before we go on to closing remarks. Linda?
Sheriff, a Superior Court judge recently ruled that same-sex couples can marry in New Jersey rather than just have civil unions. Where do you stand on this?
Well, as a law enforcement officer, we are trained and make sure that we go by what the rulings are of the courts. Now, of course, there could be appeals that are to that. And I believe this is a very personal decision that needs to be made within each and every household. I have many friends that are gay or lesbian. And you know what? They're not bad people. And God has created them just like they created us. But I can tell you, as a Catholic, I have a hard time saying that marriage of same-sex couples, give them all their rights, give them all the benefits they need. You know, if somebody needs to make a decision as far as an insurance policy, a death, or someone's in the hospital, absolutely, they're a couple. And that's the way it should be. But again, if it gets appealed and it's won in the appeal, put it to the voters and let them make the decision. You know, our voters are going to have the opportunity to vote in November on minimum wage. And that's very important to people. But what we also need to do is we need to make sure that the federal government is raising the minimum wage across all the states. That way we don't have businesses competing to go to a different state because their minimum wage may be less and they can spend less money making their product. So that's one of the things that I'm definitely for. And again, I'm definitely against this mileage tax. I'm also against this bag tax, where we want to tax the middle class for every paper or plastic bag that they get out of a grocery store. Government needs to stay out of businesses, just like this gas tax. No, it's just that easy. Don't charge New Jersey registrations. Charge ones from out of state. Maybe electric vehicles, maybe not. And who gets it taken on the chin? The business owner. Government needs to stay out of businesses. Businesses will be much more efficient.
Thank you. Mr. Whelan.
Linda, I voted for gay marriage before it was cool, okay? In 2007, I was the only member of the state legislature to support gay marriage at that time. I voted for it. It did not pass. It came back and passed the second time. I voted for it then. And I don't think we put people's rights up for an election. What happens?
No, please hold your applause. Please hold it.
You know, what happens if we say, well, you know, maybe 5 years from now we want to reverse those rights? If people have a right to marriage, then let's give them that right. And I hope that we do as a legislature and follow the mandates of the court. Let me just touch on two other issues. I don't want your nickel from your plastic bag. Here's what I want. I want you to use this, okay? It's real simple. 100,000 sea mammals, according to the United Nations, again, not Jim Whelan, are dying each year. 1 million seabirds are dying each year from plastic that goes into the ocean. There's a glob the size of Hawaii floating around the Pacific. Let's do something about that. I don't want your nickel. Use this.
Thank you. We're going to go to the close. You've been a very, very patient audience about not clapping, not everything. When they're done, please give them a big round of applause when we're done. We're going back to the first opener is the first closer, and so I believe that's you, Mr. Whelan.
Thank you, Sharon. The central issue of this campaign is how do we make sure that all our residents feel the benefits of the rising economy. Let's start by enacting the millionaire's tax, asking the super wealthy to pay a little more as they reap a windfall. It's only fair, and it gives us the money we need for a 10% property tax cut. That's not only good for the individual homeowner, it's good for the economy. Give that working family $700 more, they're not going to put it in their stock options. They're going to spend it to buy a needed appliance for their kids' school clothes. Let's raise the minimum wage, helping lift people out of poverty. Again, that extra money is going to stimulate the economy because it's going to be spent. And let's diversify our local economy, both in the tourism area, with more conventions and trade shows and events, and regionally, developing high-tech jobs in energy, education, and manufacturing. Those are the things I work for every day, and I ask for your vote so that we can make them happen. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mr. Whelan. Mr. Bellis.
Thank you. Campaigns. Campaigns are to show the differences between the candidates. My opponent believes that campaigns should run with these negative personal attacks. I will not engage in personal attacks. This is what desperate career politicians do when they care more about power than the people they serve. Campaigns should be about our records. His record, 30 plus years in elected office. I'm proud of my record as a police officer. I'm proud of my record as a leader, as a sheriff. My opponent wants you to believe that he's fighting for the middle class while proposing taxing you for every mile you drive and every paper or plastic bag you get from a grocery store. The middle class I know, they drive. They go shopping. In the last 8 years, my opponent has failed to take any serious or effective measures to limit property tax. What now would make you believe he will fight for property tax relief? It's time for a change, a positive change for a positive future. My name is Frank Ballas. I'm asking for your vote. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, thank you. Thank you for being good with the rules and sticking to the times and everything we've done. Audience, we're going to take a few-minute break to reset the stage for the assembly candidates, and then we'll come forward and we're going to get them mic'd, and then we'll get started for the evening. Thank you again.
This love of mine goes on and on, though life is empty since you have gone. Through the day and all the night, I cried my heart out. It's bound to break since nothing matters. Don't let and the moon, the stars that shine, what's to become of it, this love of mine. It's low. strips my conscience bare, it's witchcraft. And I've got no defense for it, the heat is too intense for it. What good would common sense for it do? 'Cause it's witchcraft, that crazy witchcraft. And although I know it's strictly, it's taboo. When you arouse that need in me, my heart says yes indeed to me. Proceed with what you're leading me to. It's such an ancient glitch, but one that I'd never switch. 'Cause there's no nicer witch than you. And although I know it's strictly, it's taboo. When you arouse that need in me, my heart says yes indeed to me. Proceed with what you're leading me to. It's such an ancient pitch, but one that I'd never switch. 'Cause there's no nicer witch than you. Ba-doo-ba-dee-doo, yeah, nice little witch. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm. I'll be loving you always, with a love that's true always. When the things you plan need a helping hand, I will understand. Always, always, days may not be fair. Always, that's when I'll be there. Always, not for just an hour, not for just a day, not for just a year, but always. These may not be fair, always. That's when I'll be there, always.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, if we could organize ourselves for the assembly debate.
Not for just a year, but always.
Delay it until she gets back. Hold off. I think she's in her ages.
We could take our seats, please, so we can get the assembly debate started. Enough hugging. All right, folks, we're just about ready to start. This, of course, is the debate among the assembly candidates, or the candidates for the General Assembly in the 2nd Legislative District. It is going to be moderated by SHaron, just as before, and I'll let her take it away.
Thank you, Pete. And all the same rules apply. I don't think there's too many new people. If you thought I had trouble telling my left from my right at the beginning of the first part of the debate, now that there's 4 people and I have to figure out who's going next, guaranteed I can't make it happen flawlessly. So please bear with me. Let me introduce the assembly candidates first. On your left are the Democratic challengers Vince Mazzeo and Nick Russo. On your right are the Republican incumbents, Assemblyman John Amodeo and Assemblyman Chris Brown. Once again, we have our timer and our questioners. The format will be the one we used before. The first person responding to a question will get 2 minutes. All other respondents will get 1 minute for rebuttal. And then we'll again do 1 minute close in the same type of a thing. First opener is the first closer. There is a 2-minute opening. The first opener was decided through a toss of the coin, and the alternating party candidates will go after that. So this side won the coin. You won the coin toss.
I won the coin toss.
And you're going first.
Yes.
Okay, so we're doing this first. John Amodeo will go first. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. Good evening, everyone. You know, over the last 4 years, we've made real progress digging ourselves out of the policies that gave us a $2.2 billion deficit, a 70% increase in property taxes, and 190,000 private sector jobs lost. New Jersey was unaffordable, and residents and businesses were leaving our state. We pursued an aggressive agenda, balancing 4 budgets without tax hikes, a comprehensive property tax control program, and making job growth in South Jersey a priority. We made the impossible a reality, keeping casino reinvestment development funds in Atlantic City. They said it couldn't be done. We did it. And with that money, we are investing in our people, creating jobs today, and restoring growth and prosperity to our area. Just look at what we invested in. Margaritaville, 162 permanent jobs. Bass Pro Shops yesterday breaking ground, 200 construction jobs, 190 permanent jobs on completion. And a 250,000 square foot conference center at Harris that promises to bring a new level of corporate business to Atlantic City. These projects and improvements all over Atlantic City got done because of what we got accomplished in Trenton. Remember the $30 million per subsidy that our casinos had to hand over to the state horse racing industry? We put a stop to it, and now that money goes towards marketing our city, our region, and our casinos. My job has been to get things done for the people of Atlantic County. Every accomplishment we had, cutting taxes, cutting spending, pension and benefit reform, making South Jersey a priority. It happened because we worked across the aisle, advanced an agenda for the residents of Atlantic County.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I believe Mr. Brown, you're next.
Thank you, Sharon. I want to thank the press of Atlantic City and the Richard Stockton College of New Jersey for hosting tonight's event right here at Dante Hall. You know, during the past 2 years, I, along with John Amodeo, have had the honor of serving all of you. You elected us to work hard for you and solve problems, not to engage in partisan bickering. I'm proud to say that by rolling up our sleeves and reaching across the aisle, we have been the most effective legislative team from this district in over a decade. We have done what was needed to be done to make sure that we got results. For our working families, 2 balanced budgets with no tax increases, the lowest rise in property taxes in 20 years, $3.2 billion for construction jobs. For our seniors, we fought to maintain the senior property tax freeze, prescription drug program, and Meals on Wheels, all to ensure that our seniors can enjoy their golden years right here in New Jersey. By working together, our local economy continues to grow with unprecedented new private investments, such as some of the projects that John mentioned. Margaritaville, Bass Pro Shop, the Harris Conference Center. When you put it together, we're talking over $300 million in capital investments, creating nearly 1,000 jobs. And with the Internet Gaming Law, which I am proud to have co-sponsored, we will be a national leader in online gaming while doubling the amount of investment for capital construction right here in Atlantic City. These accomplishments highlight the difference between now and 2 years ago. 2 years ago, New Jersey was known for Snooki and DJ Jazzy Jeff, whatever his name is. Possibly the worst TV show ever made. Now we're known for Miss America and the Super Bowl.
Thank you.
That's progress we all agree upon.
Thank you,
I'm
Mr.
proud
Brown.
of my record. Thank you.
Thank you. And now, Mr. Russo.
I also want to thank the Stockton College and the Press of Atlantic City, as the other candidates did, for this debate. It's very, very important for people to get to hear and see their candidates, to give voters a chance to make their selection here in the 2nd Legislative District. I'm the mayor of Longport, and I've been a public servant for most of my life. In addition to being the mayor, I'm also a volunteer firefighter. And before that, I was a law enforcement officer for 25 years, including time, I am very proud to say, with the Atlantic City Police Department and the Atlantic County Prosecutor's Office. I mention this part of my life because I strongly believe in public service. I have served the people of Atlantic County and the state of New Jersey for over 30 years, and I want to continue to do so as your Assemblyman. It's time the 2nd District has an Assemblyman that will go to Trenton and fight hard for the middle-class families and address the needs of our working residents. I know the people of Atlantic County are struggling to get through these tough economic times, and that's why I'll make it a priority for the middle class to see a 10% property tax cut and promote an increase in our minimum wage, and that the funding for women's health centers is restored. As a career law enforcement officer, I have a real understanding of the need for common sense gun reform. I believe in the Second Amendment, but what we have to understand here is that background checks, banning high-capacity magazines, and preventing the mentally ill from obtaining firearms is not an infringement upon those rights. It's a matter of public safety. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Mazzeo.
Thank you. Before I start, I want to thank the Press of Atlantic City and Richard Stockton College for organizing this debate. I also want to thank Assemblyman Amodeo and Brown for participating in this debate with us. For those that do not know me, I'm Vince Mazzeo. I'm the mayor of the city of Northfield. I've been mayor for 6 years. Prior to that, I was councilman for 4 years. I am also a businessman. My family owns and operates BF Mazzeo in Northfield, New Jersey, and we have been doing that for 54 years. I'm here today because I believe that the Assembly would benefit from having members with my business and local government experience. In recent years, tough economic times and ways of delivering government have made it challenging for municipalities to operate. Diminishing municipal aid, school aid, and working with the 2% cap have made it difficult for mayors like me to stabilize our tax rate while providing essential services that our constituents depend on. I believe this forum is an opportunity for my running mate and I to put forth solutions that will allow municipalities to remain fiscally conservative while making sure they are maintaining, improving the quality of life for the residents. So for the residents of the 2nd Legislative Districts, I hope we have a thoughtful and productive debate. Thank you.
Thank you. And I believe the first question is coming from Linda, and it's going to Mr. Amodeo.
Assemblyman Amodeo, what do you think are the most important issues in this campaign?
Without a doubt, property taxes. And we've seen a lot of work under the leadership of Governor Christie be achieved. As I stated earlier in my opening comments, we implemented a 2% hard cap. We've done arbitration reform, pension and benefit reform, and we've actually given in this past budget $9 million to education funding statewide. That's $100 million more than ever in the history of the state of New Jersey. We still have more work to do to finish the job. Property taxes is the #1 issue. Everyone suffers. We're the highest taxed state in the country. The median throughout the country is $2,600. We're at $7,400. I am a co-sponsor. I believe consolidation and shared services as we move forward is one of the prerequisites to help taxpayers. I'm a co-sponsor on Senate President Sweeney's bill that gives a 10% direct tax credit back on your tax bill. I know the governor publicly announced that he would forego his tax incentive and sign President Sweeney's bill and make it law. It's just been languishing in the Senate. We need to quadruple the renter's property tax credit from $50 to $200 and increase the earned income tax credit to 25. It exists currently at 20%. Closing loopholes within the property tax cap is a must. A lot of municipalities are looking to implement user fees. I can tell you, under this governor, we have had no new taxes, and he wants no new fees. When he mandated the 2% cap, we tightened everybody's belt to control spending, and as revenues increase and as we create job growth, we're going to be able to replenish and bring services back to where they were prior. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Brown, if you wish to say something, you have 1 moment.
Sure, I'll take a moment.
Okay.
First, just to echo what John said, I do agree property taxes are our primary issue that we have to deal with, and right alongside of that is jobs. Now, when we're talking about property taxes, I find it interesting because I agree with Mayor Russo in that we do need to reduce property taxes by at least 10%. And that's why I'm proud as also being a co-sponsor of the bill to do just that. And we talk about rolling up our sleeves, reaching across the aisle, and working with our friends on the other side to get things done. This is an example where the governor had submitted a proposal for tax relief, and so did Senator Sweeney. I agreed with Senator Sweeney's version. Through the Assembly, I dropped the bill to make that a reality, and we need to make sure that we give a break to the hard-working, middle-class men and women of the state of New Jersey, and one of the ways to do that is through the bill that I'm trying to get through.
Thank you very much. And now, Mr. Russo, would you like to say anything?
I also believe that property tax is a very strong issue, but I'm going to add something to that. I believe that Atlantic City is really the most important issue besides the property tax. We've talked about this, you know our position on this. I just think that there could be much more done in Atlantic City because this is what's driving our economy here in the 2nd District. I am very excited at all the things that are very, very positive that are going on. The walk, the beach bars, the beautification, the ambassador program. And the Hansen report was very, very important. It gave the outline of how to get us to be the competing gaming mecca, but we have to put the dots in and we have to come up with the ideas. And that, I think, is what we have to concentrate on.
Thank you. Mr. Mazzeo.
Thank you. I also did back the 2% property tax, also the pension reform and the health benefit reform. But I do disagree with Assemblyman Amodeo that after all those initiatives, the taxpayers of the municipalities saw a tax increase because our state aid was decreased, our school aid was decreased, a lot of property tax reform programs were either cut or they weren't there at all for the municipalities or for the residents. So what I had to do and what a lot of municipalities had to do, and I'm a very strong believer in shared services. Mayor DePamphlis, who's here right today, we've engaged in chairing the chief of police. We do our courts, and we also do our sewer and a local. We have dispatching that we go through Egg Harbor Township, and this saves hundreds of thousands of dollars. When we, in 2008,
Thank you, Mr. Mazzeo. I appreciate your stopping. The next question begins with Mr. Russo, and it comes from John Frungen.
If I may, I'd like to stay with property taxes a little longer. In the Stockton poll, we found 80% of New Jersey voters say property taxes have gone up a little or a lot in the last 3 years. It's always a top issue. Does this suggest to you that the reforms that the state has done with the cap is not working? And how would you control property taxes? Mayor, you mentioned 10% cut. What would you do to cut that?
Well, John, clearly, the Christie plan has not worked when it comes to property taxes. I signed on with the 2% cap. I think that was a good idea. And when things are good ideas, we're going to say that they're good ideas, and we're going to go forward. But clearly, for taxes, property taxes to go up 13% in the last 3 years, or 19%, I believe, in the last 4 years, is certainly, that's unacceptable. I do not support an across-the-board income tax cut, but I do support this millionaire's tax, as Senator Whelan explained that. And when you really look at that, I disagree that it's going to drive people out of New Jersey. I know people will reference the Boston College study, but when you look at that study, you're really talking about people that left that were making about $150,000. And to be quite honest with you, I'm the mayor of Longport, and I don't know many millionaires that don't have a second home. So they have some other place to go. And when they say that we're driving people out with that, I don't believe that. And this millionaire's tax, all it would do is just give a little bit of relief to the middle class, and I think that's what they're asking for. So that basically answers, that's basically my answer. I really don't have anything else to add, but it is unacceptable for 16,000 people to, they're not leaving.
Thank you. Mr. Mazzeo, do you want to say anything?
Yes. The 2% cap was a great idea, and it does control spending. But like I said before, when state aid was decreased, school aid was decreased, and the property tax reform programs were either cut or vanished, or they vanished, it was certainly a back way to cause a 19% tax increase, property tax increase for the last 4 years. This millionaire's tax that we're talking about would help to give quick relief as far as a short-term fix, I think, as far as giving people back, especially my town. I don't have a lot of people who have second homes as Mayor Russo, but we do have a lot of middle-class people that live there, and a lot of working people who would look at this money, and it would really mean a lot to them, and it would put money back into the economy. I think that the long-term answer is that if I was elected, if I was elected as Assembly so graciously.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you very much. I'm going to stick to the times. I'm not trying to be rude to cut you off.
Yeah, I understand. I got on a roll.
Mr. Amodeo.
Thank you. Well, as long as everybody's talking about the millionaire's tax, I just want to say that I do not support it. I voted it every time it came up for an override in our House. I feel that the job creators in the state of New Jersey are the most wealthiest. When we create jobs, we put money into the revenue stream. Since Governor Christie took office, we've had the lowest rate of increase in property taxes in 2012, and that was 1.6%. That was the lowest rate in 21 years. When we take the private sector jobs created in the past 3 years, 130,000, and 65,000 of them August 2012 through August 2013, it tells you that we're sending this state in the right direction to create a revenue stream, to build the coffers, and create jobs. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Brown.
Thank you. One of the things that I've learned going to Trenton is that there are different philosophies on how to solve a problem. And it doesn't surprise me that my friends over here would like to raise another tax. One of the things that I've learned while in Trenton is that there are two distinct philosophies. When the Democrat Party and my friends see a problem, they look to raise a tax or a fee and figure they'll fix it that way. And we had 10 years of that approach under McGreevy and Corzine. And during those 10 years, we lost over 300,000 residents. They fled the state. And it's not just a Boston College study. It's one that was reviewed by Jim Hughes, the Dean of Public Policy at Rutgers. And he said this policy is driving our citizens out. We had 115 tax increases. They doubled spending and tripled our debt. That is not the policies of McGreevy and Corzine that we want to go back to. Under Governor Christie, balanced budgets with no new taxes. That's the future.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Thank you.
The next question is coming from Linda, and it's going to Mr. Brown.
Assemblyman Brown, Atlantic City's casinos are still struggling, and so is the economy. Are you satisfied with the results from the tourism district, or do you see something else that could benefit this area?
That's a very good question. Obviously, one of our main focus is to make sure that the casino industry continues to succeed and thrive. Indirectly and directly, there are 95,000 jobs that depend upon it. Can it do more? Of course, but we finally have a governor who's paid attention to this district. If you look at when the Democratic Party controlled the legislature and the governor, the revenue was still leaving to other parts of the state, and there wasn't the kind of attention being spent. With the tourism district, we are now moving forward. And if you think about it, it's like a mosaic. There are many pieces that come together in order to make this artwork possible. The glue that holds it together is clean and safe. And when you look at 30 Class 2 officers, 60 ambassadors, a violent crimes task force that is made up of every local and county and state teams coming together, which is an example of what we can do when we work together. Improve boardwalk lighting and cameras, because let's be honest, nobody's going to come here no matter what we build or what we do if it's not clean and it's not safe. What has that resulted in? Harris Conference Center, $134 million investment, 300 temporary jobs, 140 permanent jobs for everyone here in our county. Bass Pro Shops, as we talked about, $34 million investment, 500 temporary jobs, 200 permanent jobs. Margaritaville, $35 million investment, 250 temporary jobs, 160 permanent jobs. Steel Pier, $100 million investment. When you look at the money that is coming in from the private sector to invest in non-gaming attractions, that's exactly the direction we want to go in. We cannot and are having trouble with competing with the non-gaming.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Thank you.
I don't want to keep doing that to you. I'm sorry, but we just got to do. She is putting up the signs for you. Okay, Mr. Amodeo.
Thank you. No, Linda, I'm never satisfied. I think we still can achieve better. I think we've made great strides, and everybody in this room would agree. Governor Christie's been a friend to South Jersey with all the work he's done and his commitment. There's no question about his commitment. Creating a tourism district, funneling CRDA funds back into Atlantic City and Atlantic City only. We still have a lot of work to do. The clean and safe, it's there. We're very happy with the boardwalk. We're a town that we have to take to the next level. We've heard it before. Air travel, we need to utilize the gem we have in Egg Harbor Township, our Atlantic City International Airport. We need to bring in convention business. That's the next segment of what we have to do. We're an event-driven locale. We need to create events to bring people in here. The competition that has spread, it's done. We're not the monopoly in gambling. We're not the #2 number in the world anymore. We have competition. Nothing we can do about it.
Thank you. Mr. Russo.
Well, I agree that crime is the priority. People aren't going to come to any city unless it's safe. But what are some of the things that can be done? I've spent a lot of time talking to casino people, and they want to see weekly promotions. They want to see something going on in this town every single day. They said that the Boardwalk Hall should be better utilized. It's underutilized. They want to see more incentives for new construction. If we have those programs and they're not working, we've got to evaluate and see why they're not working. People are talking about Bader Field. Is there anything that can be done there? They're talking about ventures with colleges and universities to bring the young people here into our vacant land. But what we have to do is stay focused. Again, the Hansen report gives us the ideas. Now tells us what our objective is. Now we have to come up with the ideas to get there. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Mazzeo?
Yeah, I thought the tourism district was a great thing for Atlantic City. I also believe that it's important to do these incentives that we get businesses like Pro Bass, also Margaritaville, businesses like that. I also feel that, I'll go back to the property taxes, that we need to control property taxes so businesses can come to not only Atlantic City but other towns outside and invest in our communities so we could get jobs and get the economy going. I just want to touch a little bit, since we're going back in time, Mr. Brown. You said about Corzine and McGreevy that we're going to go back to that. We might as well go back to Christy Whitman when she robbed the pension system too as well. And we're still paying for that, as you know. And also, Mr. Amodeo, you said about a 1.6%. That's correct when we go with the 2% cap. But if you take where the state aid was taken away from us, the school aid, and the property tax reform programs, it's about 18.6% in the last 4 years.
Thank you very much. And now, John, you're going to ask Mr. Mazzeo the next question.
Mayor, are you satisfied with the state's effort to help affected regions recover from Superstorm Sandy? Is there anything more the state should have done or should be doing now?
Well, coming from the shore community from the mainland community of Northfield, I certainly haven't been hit like the shore communities like Mayor Russo, where firsthand store damage, it was tremendous and a very terrible storm that went through. But the complaints that I hear that the people aren't receiving the monies quickly, and I think we had a definite communication problem between the state and some municipalities. I thought that in the beginning, as it was going on, I thought Governor Christie did a great job with it. But one of the things that, if people remember, in June 30th of last year, the Recchio, which I'd never even heard of before, came through the mainland communities and caused tremendous damage, where mayors from Linwood, Northfield, we had to do a really thorough cleanup. We did get FEMA money, but that money does take time to get where it has to go, and I think Superstorm Sandy was a storm that caused billions of dollars of damage, and there's still a lot of work to be done, and the residents aren't totally satisfied with what's going on.
Thank you. Mr. Russo.
Well, I'm certainly not happy or satisfied that there's been a delay in the money that people are entitled to get themselves back on their feet. But what I am happy about is that we're showing progress as far as mitigation. The federal government and the state government. What can we do to prevent this type of damage from occurring again? So clearly, it comes down to 2 or 3 things. Number one, we've got to protect ourselves from the ocean and the bay, and that's being done by dunes and bulkheads. And number two, we have to address the housing elevation that we allow here on the Barrier Island. In Longport, since I've been in office, we went to elevation 12, and I can attest, to the best of my knowledge, that not one house at elevation 12 got damaged as bad as the storm was. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Amodeo.
Yes, thank you. No, I'm not satisfied. I think that the issue looms with all legislative offices in the 9 affected counties. It's probably the busiest time we've had personally as legislators dealing with some very sad issues. That's why, along with my colleague John Wisniewski in the Assembly, I co-sponsored with him the Sandy Victims Bill of Rights bill. We want that to go through the legislature during lame duck to give our victims the opportunity to have some rights moving forward. The other issue I brought to the legislature was a bill on the safety of raising houses. We've all seen the events in the paper of the house that came down in Little Egg Harbor, Little Egg Harbor. That was a catastrophe. Moving forward, we need to have safe provisions in place so that there's safety and that OSHA can apply to those issues to keep it a safe work environment for the people raising houses. Thank you.
Mr. Brown?
Pretty much everything that you can say about Sandy and the state, I think, has been said. I will echo this, that I do agree very much that there is more that can be done. I have my own friend who contacted the office and explained how the insurance company was not paying on the claim. And along with John, I'm very proud that when we heard more of these complaints, not just from FEMA and not just from the state, but also from the insurance carriers, sponsored a bill to make sure that we hold the insurance companies accountable, that they cannot act in bad faith and try to undercut homeowners, not pay on the claims that are being submitted. We all understand that the insurance companies are the first ones to take your premiums. But when the time comes that you actually need them, we need as a state to continue to make sure that they make those payments. So that is one different area in which John and I are working towards looking out for everyone in the second district.
Thank you. And I believe the next question is from Linda to Mr. Amodeo.
Assemblyman Amodeo, what restrictions, if any, would you place on rebuilding of damaged or destroyed properties that are subject to storms along the coastline?
Well, you know, restrictions, I believe that when the final maps come out, that'll you know, set the tone on what's going to happen. I personally would not place restrictions on homeowners. All I know is for their safety, I would do whatever we needed to do to protect homeowners as they rebuild through this process. I mean, I heard in the former debate about the issue with the velocity zone. I think now with the work that we've done as legislators and as county elected officials all getting together, both Democrats and Republicans in a room and talking with FEMA, the DEP, and all interested parties, we were able to come to a compromise and try to make the restrictions less impactful, but at the same time protect our homeowners. The general safety of our public is foremost. We've seen the executive order by Governor Christie to create dunes along the whole stretch from Sandy Hook to Cape May. You know, looking in the future, that mitigation is needed. We need to protect our homes. Wherever there were dunes, there were no damage, or minimal damage, I should say. Where there wasn't dunes, that's where we faced all the damage. So moving forward, I don't know if I would use the word restrictions. I think we have to be open and understand in the low-lying areas, we have to address that. The elevation, the base flood elevation for the first floor, we have to encompass, and at least the average home's built for 100 years. We have to look 100 years in the future with scientific data to see what that elevation would be, and that's what the municipalities should be able to adopt. I don't believe in taking away home rule. I think the guidelines should be set, and the municipalities should follow from what the federal government sets for us. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Brown?
Yes. There are certain realities that we all have to deal with, and that one of them is the climate is changing. And as that climate changes and weather becomes more severe, we have to take that into consideration as we plan for the future. And when we plan for the future, certainly the government should play a role. Now, we were very fortunate because initially when FEMA put out the preliminary maps along with Mayor Russo, I know that we would attend many coastal coalition meetings. And the smartest thing that we did as politicians was hire somebody that actually knows what they're doing, and that was Dr. Stu Farrell. And Dr. Farrell put together the scientific data necessary in order to show FEMA that the V zones were absurd, and they were a catastrophe looming for us. Because if they were to have stayed in effect, people could not have been able to afford to raise their homes. Then if they didn't, they wouldn't have been able to afford their insurance, and we would have had a mass exodus off of this island, which would have devastated everyone.
Thank
so
you.
I'm very thankful we were able to accomplish that.
Thank you. Mr. Russo?
Well, I actually saw Sandy as well firsthand. And yes, the bay did not get 3-foot waves, but the bay certainly replicated the ocean. It was very, very bad. Now, getting on to the ocean side, they've mentioned the dune. I have stood up and have led the fight to support dunes. What we have to do is for the greater good. And I've already told people I am not buckling to one or two people that are concerned about their views, are concerned about how this is going to affect their life. As elected officials, we have to do what's right for the greater good, and I cannot see using taxpayer money to constantly rebuild an area if those people in that area refuse to do what's prudent, and dunes are the prudent thing to do.
Thank you. Mr. Mazzeo?
Yes, as Mayor Russo, who was, I learned a lot from him about Hurricane Sandy or Superstorm Sandy, and that, he was in the forefront of making sure that he was all for putting dunes in front of his Longport municipality. And I think as you take an oath as the mayor, you're there to serve and protect the people of the resident that you serve. So it's very important that we continue to protect the shoreline. I think what the Governor Christie came out with was certainly a good executive order to make sure that the dunes get down from all the way down the New Jersey coast. So that didn't have a great deal to my community, but I certainly was ongoing watching what was going on, and I did feel for what was going on to the people, and I hope that we learned a valuable lesson, and so some of these things don't happen down the road.
Thank you. And John, your next question goes to Mr. Russo.
This question, Mayor, was posed by a Stockton College student. What, if anything, have you done to advance the use of green energy, and what would you do if elected?
Well, that's a very, very good question. And what we have done in Longport is, first of all, we've taken an older building that has historical value, and rather than tear that building down and start again, we have attempted to save it, make it be retrofitted, have a practical application, and do as much as we can to go green in that area. Now, what do we really mean by green? I mean, the biggest thing that I'm seeing right now is clearly the use of solar energy, solar panels. And I think that there is a movement towards that. We are certainly committed to do whatever we can do in our borough to support the green plan. And I think it's good for all of us. Assemblyman Brown mentioned climate change. Well, we could debate why the climate is changing, but we can't debate that the climate is changing. And once we start to get away from the fossil fuel usage and break ourselves of this habit, that's the only time that we're going to see a real change in this environment and a real change, hopefully, in our weather pattern. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Mazzeo.
Thank you very much. Northfield is we're on the cutting edge as far as trying to do green energy initiatives. We retrofitted our city hall, our library, our HVAC systems. We updated in the last few years. We're on the way of trying to become Sustainable New Jersey. We have a website that we just put up to fall into the criteria so our residents can look into doing other green energy initiatives. Our school, Northfield Community School, has solar panels that they just put up about 2 years ago that they bonded, and the community voted yes for that. So also in our land use ordinance, we updated it last year to incorporate wind turbines as far as into the city. Also solar panels, and to be updated to go with what's going into the future. And Senator Whelan mentioned at the last debate about wind turbines off the coast. I'm in favor of that. I think it's a good initiative and would possibly save stuff.
Thank you. Mr. Amodeo.
Yes, thank you. I'm fortunate enough to be one of the co-sponsors of the Offshore Wind and Economic Development Bill that went through both the Senate and the Assembly, signed into law by Governor Christie, I think back in 2012. There's been a lot of work done. We still have a long road to go to be able to start the Fisherman Energy Project off our coast. There's still a lot of issues the BPU has. They're trying to iron them out. they're working in that direction. That is a great piece of legislation. That's our future as we move forward. We just have to get to the point where the transmission lines can become more economical so that we don't pass that back to the ratepayer, the cost for the installation of that, although we know there's a long-term sustainability with offshore wind. Also, manufacturing jobs locally. There are bills in the Senate and the Assembly, which I think we're all a part of, your elected officials in this district, which create manufacturing jobs. It takes, boat yards, places that do fiberglass work to create the parts for the windmills. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Brown.
As has been indicated, one of the nice things that I've found is that we can marry our support of solar energy with progress and cost savings for the taxpayers while creating jobs. And that is a kind of innovation and thinking that we need as we move forward. An example is right now, New Jersey is #1 in the country for solar development. I believe that if you feel that you want to be independent, then solar energy is the way to go, because you do not have to rely on anyone else other than your own panels to generate your own electricity. The marriage between solar and government was seen not only in Northfield, but prior to Northfield, it was done in Egg Harbor Township. It saved the school district $287,000 in electric bills. That's 1 cent on the tax bill, which means $100 for every $100,000 assessed. When we talk about property tax savings,
Thank you.
that's an example of solar providing direct property tax relief.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. And now, you're going to get your chance again. Linda, your question is to Mr. Brown.
Okay.
Assemblyman, what can be done to stimulate jobs and the economy in the state?
Well, right off the bat, one of the things that we've talked about earlier is we have to make New Jersey more affordable. And we all agree that property taxes are too high. And so when you talk about creating jobs, I'm reminded of an article from the press where they interviewed Carl Redding. He was a former Marine. He was an aide for Al Sharpton, an African-American who came to Atlantic City, an entrepreneur trying to start a business. After a year or so, he had to leave. And when the press asked him, they said, hey, what's the one reason, what's the one thing you would change that you think would help make your business succeed? And he said, the taxes are too high. It costs me more money to do business here in Atlantic City than it would if I was in New York. When we're looking at creating jobs, we also have to remember that balancing the budget and not raising taxes is an enticement to bring those jobs in. I can tell you that I sponsored a bill along with my colleague John Amodeo, which Lieutenant Governor recently spoke about, which creates jobs right here in South Jersey and Atlantic County. We're one of 8 counties to benefit from the New Jersey Economic Opportunity Act. And what that does is that gives businesses the incentives to create jobs through tax credits, move here from other states and construct new facilities. When you are working towards creating these jobs, we have to think about what had happened in the past. During the spending, and I don't need to go back to Whitman, I'll stick with Governor Christie. But I'll go back to Corzine and McGreevey and say that the Dean of Rutgers Public Policy declared the 10 years under Corzine and McGreevey's tax and spend policies as the lost jobs decade.
Thank you.
That's what we don't need.
Thank you. Mr. Amodeo.
Yes. 140,000 private sector jobs just aren't created just out of nowhere. It's not with the effort of the governor and the legislature working to create $213 million in business tax relief. In his 3rd year of job-creating tax cuts, we eliminated certain taxes on New Jersey jobs and capital and allowing taxes to be offset by previous operating losses. Ended existing business taxes, the 4% corporate business tax, the CBT surcharge, the TEFA energy tax, and an extra tax on group accident and health insurance. We reduced the minimum tax on S corporations by 25%. That's why our growth of 160,000 jobs 60,000, 65,000 in the last 12 months is showing that what the governor is doing is working. Those are the job creators.
Thank you. Mr. Russo.
I'm going to provide a practical answer as it pertains to our District 2. And that is clearly we need development of jobs outside of the casino industry and or that support the casino industry. Jobs that are in the ancillary field. For instance, right here in this city, we have a thriving business called AC Linen. And what that does is cleans the towels and the sheets and everything, supports our casino industry. Are there other industries, ancillary industries, that could also support our casinos, and that could be a light industry or a technology that can be in this area? That's what we have to look at. We've got to look at this from the perspective of right here in Legislative District 2. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mazzeo.
Yes, I'll speak from the perspective from the mayor. I think that a lot of infrastructure in communities and the county and the state, it's been said that our infrastructure is in deplorable conditions. We need to possibly find ways to, there was talk about the transportation fund. We have to make sure that's funded because that's a direct way of creating jobs as well, because if that fund is funded, we will be able to go out and have our infrastructure fixed. The DOT every year, our transportation fund, Northville gets, I guess for the last 5 or 6 years, we probably used about $600,000 to $800,000 for our roads. Now that created jobs. It also created, also made our streets drivable, where we didn't have to put the invested and bond on that. So things of that nature. Infrastructure. Also, I think we have to put investment in updating in higher education.
Thank you.
Oops, sorry.
And I did like that higher education part, but we got to stop.
We passed that.
Okay. Yes, you did. The next question is from John to Mr. Mazzeo.
Mayor, Superior Court judge recently ruled that same-sex couples in New Jersey can marry. Where do you stand on this issue?
I'm a mayor. I do weddings. I've done probably 105, 110 weddings since I've been mayor. I was go back, I think in 2006 or 7 when the civil union bill was passed, our mayor in town decided not to do weddings because you have to commit when you do weddings to do civil unions. Well, I've done 2 civil union weddings, and those people seemed as happy as a regular wedding to me. So who am I to judge about gay marriage? I'm all for that gay marriage equality. I think other states are going. I think that New Jersey will soon be passing that bill to go forward with that. Like I said, when I did these weddings, these people were happy, and I'm not going to pass judgment on them. So that's how I feel about it.
Thank you. Mr. Russo.
Well, I believe what we're talking about here is us following a federal model in this area. And like Vince Mazzeo, I also do weddings and civil unions. And I support this marriage bill, this marriage concept, because it is a question of equality. It's a question of health care. It's a question of giving people benefits that they may not get without this mechanism. So if it's been approved by the courts have ruled on this. I think what we're going to do is see this appealed. Personally, I want to appeal it. I would just let it go and go from there. I certainly don't have a problem with this.
Thank you. Mr. Amodeo.
Thank you, Sharon. I do not support gay marriage I don't really want to comment on it. I just want to let everybody know that I will not vote in favor of the override that we're going to be faced with. I believe marriage is between a man and a woman. I'm a Roman Catholic, and that's how I was raised, and I support that issue. I still support civil unions. I have many friends that don't agree with me, but that's my philosophy, and that's what I'm going to stick to. So everybody knows my answer. I just don't want to expound on it.
Thank you. Mr. Brown?
This is an issue that I will tell you that, yes, I would vote to override the governor's veto. But it's not about judging people, and it's not about following a model. It's about civil rights. And the New Jersey Supreme Court previously had said under Harris that a civil union provides every single right that a marriage would provide. And therefore, under that model, it was not a civil rights issue, and everyone was receiving equal rights under the law. The federal Supreme Court recently ruled that if the state has a civil union, those gay and lesbian couples will not receive certain federal benefits. Now, it's a civil rights issue. I'm not going to talk about anybody else's position. I just believe when it comes to civil rights, it's not appropriate for the public to vote upon it. When it comes to civil rights, it's about the legislature and the courts doing what is right.
Thank you. This will be the last question before we close. And I believe the question is from Linda to Mr. Amodeo.
With everyone in New Jersey having a stake in Atlantic City, do you think that it's fair that the money from the CRDA stay within the city limits, or do you see any exceptions?
No, absolutely no exceptions. I worked too hard to keep that money here and doing away with horse subsidies. We all know that that was an issue back in 2007 when I first ran for the Assembly seat and was so lucky to receive the endorsement of the people of the 2nd District, that I stayed and worked on that, and it wasn't until Governor Christie came. Remember, I'm in the minority house. For 2 years, my first term, I was in the minority with a Democratic governor. Couldn't deem CCC employees essential employees of the state of New Jersey. It took the minority and a Republican governor to get that done so that there would never be another shutdown of the casino industry here in the state of New Jersey. The other thing, CRDA funds, coming back here, the governor gave us 5 years. We're all on board. This legislators in this district are all on board. We want the money here. We want it to go to Atlantic City. We needed help here desperately, and we have to continue. So there's no issue with me taking money from where that 1.25% reinvestment tax that the casinos pay to go outside of Atlantic City. We don't have good times anymore. We have competition, so it has to stay here. Thank you, Linda.
Thank you. Mr. Brown?
Well, I too agree that the money needs to stay here in Atlantic City. What we all have to acknowledge and realize is that convenience gaming is obviously hurting our bottom line in the casinos and the revenue. So what do we have to do to protect ourselves from convenience gaming coming up around us? We have to make sure that we continue to grow non-gaming attractions. And how do we do that? We do that through the CRETA and through the leadership of someone like John Palmieri, as well as through the ACA and the leadership of Liza Carbonell. And we get the investment that we're getting. When you talk about a destination resort, Margaritaville is a destination. People will travel up to 50 to 60 miles just to go there and spend the day. Well, now you're putting a destination within a destination resort. When they're here, they will go to our other restaurants, go to our other stores, and that is a type of non-gaming investment that's important.
Thank you. Mr. Russo?
I also agree that the casino redevelopment money stay in Atlantic City. It's redevelopment. And, you know, we created a tourism district. But Atlantic City is more than a tourism district. It's a community district. And what makes up your community? Your churches, your children, your small businesses. And I would like to see more done in the areas outside of our tourism district to make sure that we send a clear message that the rest of Atlantic City outside the tourism district is not abandoned, not forgotten, and the best way to do that is to keep those funds here in Atlantic City. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mazzeo.
I think we're all in agreement to keep the funds in Atlantic City. I also, these economic times that we're in, I think it's best to keep that funding in Atlantic City. I also agree with Assemblyman Brown about continuing the non-game attractions and also to have business incentives to grow Atlantic City and have people invest in Atlantic City. And it's very important to keep that money funding more now than ever, because we have a lot going on and a lot that needs to be done as far as employment and getting businesses in town and getting us back on track. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to go to the 1 minute close. We'll be going in the same order that we began. So, Mr. Amodeo.
The last time I will thank you, Sharon. Thank you. And I want to thank Stockton and the Press of AC for hosting this great event tonight. I also want to thank my challengers, Mayor Russo and Mayor Mazzeo, for their participation in this great debate. And most important, I want to thank the voters of the 2nd District for the confidence you placed to me over these past 6 years. You sent me to Trenton to fight for Atlantic County, and I am proud to say we accomplished a lot by working in a bipartisan way under the leadership of Governor Christie. People are going back to work. We reduced the size of government, we're controlling spending, and we are working hard to deliver real property tax relief. There is still too much at stake. With your vote, this election will help Governor Christie end unused sick leave payouts to public employees, implement shared services, and fight for real civil service reform so we can finally get property tax relief into the hands of the taxpayers. Thank you all.
Thank you. And Mr. Brown.
Yes. Thank you again. I want to thank the press in Stockton and, of course, Mayors Russo and Mazzeo and John Amodeo, my running partner. While I am an elected official, I'm a husband and a father first. As I sit with my wife and 3 kids around the dinner table, we talk about the same things that all of you talk about. Everything from how we're going to make ends meet to when cheerleading and swim practice may be and who's going to drive them, how we're going to afford college. These concerns are shared by thousands of other Atlantic County families, and I keep this in mind when I travel to Trenton and I am representing all of you. We have a responsibility to make and keep New Jersey affordable so that our families can stay here, raise their families here, and retire here. I take that responsibility very seriously, and I am doing everything that I can to help create that brighter future for everyone. Once again, I thank you very much. I ask that you vote for John Amodeo and me.
Thank you.
Chris Brown. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Russo.
I also want to thank the organizers of the debate and thank those on the team that asked the questions. I want to thank you for not asking me a question about the smiley face on the water tower. We've had enough of those questions for a lifetime. The residents of this district know that Vincent and I are going to work with Senator Whelan to make sure we have a strong voice in Trenton that stands up for our needs. We as a team will continue the bipartisan budget priorities, such as that 10% property tax cut. We'll make sure there's ample funding for women's health services, common sense gun reform, and that our veterans get good jobs when they return from overseas. We'll make Atlantic County small businessman help. We'll give him the help to rebuild, and we'll give Senator Whelan the support he needs to stand up for our middle class. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Mazzeo.
I also would like to thank everyone who organized this debate. And again, thank you to my John Amodeo and Chris Brown. I want to end this debate by letting the residents of District 2 know that if so gracious be elected as Assemblyman, I will work hard every day to make this district a better place to live. I'll do that by applying business principles to government. I know that you cannot run government like a business. Instead, we need to make sure that government can address the needs of everybody, especially those of the middle class. The time has come for all elected officials to work together and fight for those who are getting squeezed. I have always worked hard as mayor, and I will continue to do so if elected as Assemblyman in the 2nd District. Thank you, everyone, and good night, and I am looking for your support. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And before you leave, I thank you for being such a great audience. I'd like to thank Alex Marino for organizing all this at Dante Hall Theater for us. He's giving me a signal here. I don't know what it is. I'd like to thank Dan Douglas from the Hughes Center, obviously the people down here, and of course our co-sponsors, the Press of Atlantic City. Yeah, and what are we